the FNL Network talk show.
All right. Hey, everybody. We've got the beautiful Bethany and just as beautiful Jeff, Rocco, and I, Sean. Welcome, everybody, to the FNL talk show. And we are going to have some fun. And then to start off, Rocco, you were just showing off those tattoos. Come on, go ahead and do a little flex for everybody. Show us those tattoos. Show us those. So now, what is it that you have there? Kung Pao chicken?
Okay.
What are you showing off?
This is I love Kung Pao chicken.
Yes.
This is the FNL Network logo. No, this, and then this side, it means the Asian. It means to persevere with power, strength, courage, integrity, and discipline. And then that's this too shall pass. So on the inside of my arms, on one side I have the FNL Network logo. On the other side, this too shall pass. And then in Chinese, I have persevere with power, strength, courage, and integrity, and indomitable spirit. Those characters, the Asian characters, derive from all the martial arts I did when I was younger. So, Sean, you and I have a very similar past. We grew up together. We've known each other since we were 13 or 14 years old. But you and I both were bullied and picked on, and we were overweight when we were younger. And my mom brought me to Taekwondo class on my 13th birthday and signed me up. So basically, every day after school, I would go take these lessons. And every time we would do a lesson, we would bow in, like to show respect to the Korean flag, the American flag, our instructor, and the school. And we would say, we would recite these positive statements, which are the ones now that I have tattooed into my arms. And it was so many years of this, I was reinforcing these traits, and I applied these traits to my day-to-day life and my business and so on. And that's basically how I conduct myself, And yeah, I started the tattoos when I was 17. The last one I got was actually in the Asian writing. I got that the final words, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. The FNL Network tattoo, I got that within the last 2 years. The This Too Shall Pass, my brother and I got that together in Las Vegas maybe 20 years ago. And so This Too Shall Pass, basically, there was a story of a prince. I don't remember word for word the story, but essentially, no matter how bad it gets, it will pass and it will be better, no matter how bad it gets. It's also biblical. And then no matter how good it gets, it also will pass. So what's important is to appreciate it. That's what's important. So it's remembrance of appreciation, because everything eventually will pass.
I was saying this too shall pass, and I think that's why I'm single, Rocco. It did not work for me. But I mean, and did you research those characters before getting? Because if I was a tattoo artist, I would just be putting some crazy stuff on people's arm. I'd be putting like the signal for poo-poo on somebody's arm, the signal for like seaweed, and be like, oh yeah, it means well, like send you on your way. So I don't know. I'll be like, I would encourage our viewers to research those symbols before tattooing. That's all I would, But maybe I just say dinner, and that's what I would do as a tattoo artist. So it just might be me. I don't know.
Well, luckily, I did look them up prior.
Okay.
And since I've gotten the tattoos, I've been to China.
Okay.
And we've worked with many people from China, and I've showed them the tattoo, and they've told me how to pronounce it, and they verified that in fact it does not say I'm a stupid American Italian. I like Kung Pao chicken. It does not say that.
Good.
Yeah, it says Ili Li Shong. That right. So yeah.
Nice. And Jeff, I admire you because we found out today you are doing this Zoom on your phone. So you're holding. So this man has amazing
that's amazing.
muscles. I don't want to know what he's been doing all his life to get this amazing wrist muscle, but he does.
You are
Years of wrist strength. I love it, Jeff. Good job.
Thank you. I'm holding my streak well.
I love it. And then, we're learning all your life lessons, Rocco, right in the beginning. And, we come up with different questions and thoughts like for these shows. And I wanted to know, different things about as we learn and grow in life. And, it's very funny. So one of the things I wanted kind of all of us to share is as we've grown and as, we've gone along in life, some of the things that we've learned, that we wish we knew earlier. And I kind of want to start with Bethany because Bethany, you look like you're 12 years old. I want to know, A, how old are you? Because you look like
oh my God.
on To Catch a Predator. You would be so well cast.
Oh my gosh.
I'm doing laundry. Come on up. And then, all of a sudden they jump on the guy outside. And they're like, we got you.
Oh my God.
I want to know how old you are. And then be like, what have you learned? As your life lessons that you wish you knew a little bit earlier.
I mean,
well, would you be blown away if you found out Bethany was married with 5 children? I mean, would that just blow you away?
I don't know. Maybe. God bless. I mean, I would. I mean, actually,
she had some weird
mutation.
so this is my right hand. I'm not married. But I'm in my mid-20s, early 20s, kind of that range. So
Perfect.
I'm not 12, although you're not the first person who has said that. I was in the line at the voting booth at one point, and I was casting my vote, and the lady I was handing my ballot to was like, wow, you look 12. Let me through the door if I were 12. I drove myself here.
Oh my God.
It happens a lot. And it doesn't help that I'm 5 foot. So and I haven't grown since I was 12. So that doesn't help. It's like when I stopped growing is when I was 12. So
well, the benefit of
you holding your youth well.
Yeah, I guess it'll benefit me. I could probably sneak into a school if I wanted to, although
no need.
I mean, I very well could. I can pass, but I won't. I have no reason to. No need to go back there. So as far as life lessons, the biggest thing that came to my mind with this question is I had a few. Some of them were kind of silly because it's I have a lot of, things that I've learned, man, people will just be stupid sometimes, no matter what you do. But the biggest thing I think is that communication is a lot harder than you would think it is. Just because everyone's on their own wavelength, everyone's just kind of in their own little bubble. So it's hard to, connect sometimes, certain topics and things like that. When you're talking to someone, they may be thinking something completely different than what you're intending. And this happens a lot. I've encountered it a lot, especially in the workforce. It's just really hard to communicate sometimes. It's you can be the clearest in your message, as clear as possible, and it will still not get across sometimes. So just kind of taking a deep breath, trying things in different ways, trying different approaches, trying to see where the other person is coming from is probably the most important thing with that. It's just harder than you think it is, and there's no need to beat on yourself for it or get extremely mad, because that's just the way things are. So that's kind of my biggest thing that I've thought of with this, especially with this past week that Rocco and I have been working with. I'm sure you can agree.
Absolutely. There's a lot of things that are happening that, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on, but I'm interested to hear what other people have to say. So Sean.
Feel free to give names. I mean, I'm all
Oh
about.
no,
Like, Chris at 7 Oak Drive is such a son of OB. Show a picture. Be like, if you see him out, feel free to spit on him like a llama. I mean, just feel free. I mean, I just think that makes great television, great discussion. Why not? Pull a Nancy Pelosi on him. Just show up at his house. Whatever.
Oh,
if it's
God.
not available, get the house. No, I'm totally kidding. We don't endorse any violence or anything crazy now. Love thy neighbor.
Absolutely, yeah, no violence.
All right, no
Exactly.
violence, nothing bad. What do you wish you knew earlier, Jeff, that would have been helpful that you've learned as time gone on?
Okay, so one of my lessons in life I'm still learning is I love people and I don't really judge people. And sometimes I'll bring people on as friends and I'll see the red flags and I continue being their friends versus cutting it when I know that my relationship and friendship with them is going to hurt me in the long run. So I'm learning when I see the red flags to kind of sever that. That has been one of my things in life that has hindered me a lot. That is something that I've been working on so that I can continue moving forward, because sometimes I don't. I'll stop what I'm doing. A lot of times people don't realize it. I would stop what I'm doing to help the next person. And then I won't fulfill my mission because I'm trying to help them fulfill their mission. So those are the things, my life lessons that I'm learning is I have to fulfill my purpose and not put my purpose in the things I want to do on the back burner, the things that make me happy, to accommodate someone else, because it never works. It always bites you. It bites you hard. They'll get their stuff together and move on, and you'll still be there with the wound, trying to get yourself back in line with what you were doing. So I pick up on those things early now in life, and not let them hinder me. So that's one of the things that I'm learning as I continue growing.
Jeff. Yeah, no, you definitely have to set your own boundaries. And I mean, and to me, I definitely think like on an airplane, they say you have to put on your own mask before you can help somebody else. And the more successful you are and the better you do, Jeff, the more you can help others, because, it sounds like it's your nature. So that's, who you are. You're a good person. You want to help others. So the better you do, the more you can help. So,
yeah.
What about you, Rocco? It seems like, you had mentioned already, that you have a lot of lessons, you tattooed some on. Anything else that you've learned that you'd want to share as time?
Absolutely. There's 3. First, create your own opportunity. If you want to achieve something and you want to make a goal, do everything you can to create it yourself. Don't wait for someone to hand it to you. No one's going to just give something to you. You have to work for it and stay consistent. Don't give up. Whatever your objective and your goal is, stay on it until you achieve it. And if you need to break down to make little steps to go to that big step, do it. And I know it's a lot easier to say than do, especially when you feel discouraged and down and you feel like you can't make it. But super, super important to continue with that. Second one, do things for others without any expectations in return. It's better to give with an open heart than to give and expect something in return. Because if you have expectations, you may then be disappointed. You set yourself up for disappointment. If you give, and then in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, well, I want to get this back, or I want this to come back to me because I'm giving this. Just give it and try to enjoy the gift of giving. And giving doesn't mean materialistic. It could be time, it could be advice, it could be anything. I'm not referencing to just materialistic items. Third, take care of yourself. Listen to your body. Listen to yourself. If you feel like you're tired, go to sleep. If you feel like you can't physically do something, don't put yourself in danger and do it. So those would be my 3 tips. Awesome. How about you, Sean?
I think a lot of times I can be my own worst enemy. And I think a lot of like what I've learned as time went on is just kind of like learning that we control our own happiness. And, so one of my biggest lessons is to just really realize that most things don't matter, because I realized, like, when I was in school, I would think like, oh, like the SATs or one particular test is like the most important thing, or like, math or algebra. When have I ever used algebra? Like if you're going to be an architect, or certain things, at the time that you think are pressing or very important, don't really matter. And then I would do little silly jobs. Like I first moved to New York, being an actor, but then I needed to pay the bills. And I remember being a cater waiter at a party, and people would stress out that a mushroom didn't go out to like a high paying guest. Did that matter at all? And they were stressed out about that at that moment to them, that was important, and then you'll even hear about the bridezillas, or like, so people will take on whatever is important to them. And if you just step back from any situation at any moment, you just realize most things just do not matter. And you can just, kind of just breathe and relax, and just, even being on a movie set. It's a movie, and even too, everybody's like, okay, action, where the hell is this? Where's this going? Da, 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 da. You spent $200 million. You just wasted like, an hour, say, setting up the scene, but all of a sudden now you're ready to take it, and now it's the end of the world if it doesn't happen at that split second. People are nuts. It doesn't matter, so don't take it on. You don't need to take on that frenetic energy. Don't worry about it. Like just so no matter what's going on around you, just realize it doesn't matter. It's going to be okay. And you don't need to take on that energy. And that's just kind of how I realize it. And you don't have to tell them that they're nuts and that it doesn't matter and their $200 million movie doesn't matter, and that you don't. And it's not about not appreciating it and not being happy that you have a line in the movie, or that you're part of the catering experience, or whatever your role is that day, or wherever that you're at that wedding, or you're a guest of the wedding, or whatever it may be. But you can just step back from the situation and just realize it's like all part of the absurdities of life. And then what I also realized too, at different times, having different jobs or even roles with, like student, teacher, or, boss and employee, or what have you, sometimes somebody will give you a very silly command or tell you to do something in a way you don't agree with, or even an acting choice from a director that you don't think is good. And a lot of times they'd be like, no, and then I'm justifying like why it should be this way. And then I've realized if you just say yes and still do it the way you want to do it, 9 out of 10, they don't even catch it. So you can just say yes and do it your own way anyhow. 9 out of 10.
So that's the issue we've been having. That's the issue, Bethany, we've been having. Okay, thank you for that perspective. So how do you deal with someone like that, Sean?
Yeah,
when you catch them.
And just do it your own way, or do a compromise, but still sneak in your own way. Because a lot of it is just ego, really at the end of the day. And people just want to be seen and heard, or feel like they've won. And really, does it matter? Do most things matter? And that's what I've kind of learned. And most people shut down the second you go back with an argument or something. And the second you just take on the blame or be like, you're so right, or whatever, sincerely. You can't do it in a sarcastic manner at all. You're never going to get anywhere. But if you're just like, okay, or, or just shut down, let them be dominant in whichever way they want to be, even if you don't think they're right at all, then you will totally take the emotion out of the situation, and you can proceed with whatever you want to proceed with. So that's really what I've learned, as time went on. And you can heal almost any relationship with that, take the wind out of the sails of anything by basically letting somebody take the dominance, or surrendering to dominance, and basically taking the blame in any situation, even when you feel you're blameless, really, as well. So there's different ways to look at all of this. I think it kind of it's all separate, but it all kind of is ego related, and all kind of goes together in a way, and in a way not as well. So I've kind of combined several different topics, but not necessarily.
So I have a question with that, when you said let them be the dominant. So in them being the dominant, sometimes they can manipulate that. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that situation when they know they're using you, allowing them to take control, and they're manipulating you in ways that could really
I'm going
upset.
I'm going to share a very personal story. And so it's the biggest example. And it was, there's a group that's a self-help group. I was going to mention the name, but I guess I don't need to. And so anyhow, yeah, they basically, it's a weekend course, and it's like, what do you want to work on? And I actually was going to be like, oh, how can I really move ahead as far as like booking bigger acting work? And that's kind of what I went for. And it's like, oh, how can I maybe approach the business differently? And then it was like, kind of like, what are you missing emotionally? Anyhow, so what I just kind of said now was, it was kind of like how to disarm, major emotional things. And it was almost like an AA, like apologize to all family members, friends, whoever you hadn't done. So what I did was, so this is where I'm going with it. My dad wasn't a very loving person. He, at the age of 9, wasn't really sending child support. I was afraid that he might actually hurt me. So I discontinued my relationship with him. And so when I grew up and got older, I slowly reconnected with cousins I wasn't as close with. I had a decent relationship with them, but I kind of let my father, fall to the side. So during this course, or after this course, I don't even remember if it was during or after, I reached out to him and I actually said, sorry for all these years. And I really wasn't, but I said it. I've kind of held a grudge and that we didn't have a relationship. I just wanted to reach out to you, and that, hopefully moving forward, we can at least, talk or whatever. And then he's like, oh, well, I'm glad, you came through. Now, I was like a 9-year-old child. He was the one who did everything. He was the parent. But it basically took all the wind out of his sails, because I wasn't saying, why weren't you there? Why did you do X, Y, and Z? Why weren't you loving? Why didn't you give child support? It was all like, I, as a 9-year-old, did this. I apologize. And then what was very interesting is, before he died, which was like a few years later, for the first time ever, I heard him say on the phone, he loved me, which he had never said before. So it totally mended and healed that relationship, which never would have happened before. Now, the person will still be an abuser who always would have been an abuser or whatever. It's not like a foolproof solution, clearly. But it's something that basically, by just claiming your responsibility, even when you don't necessarily have one in a relationship with someone, will basically take, any type of bitterness or vitriol usually away from it. But if you know that person still could physically, emotionally, or whatever be abusive to you, or would be abusive for you to be in that relationship, by all means, I don't suggest anyone to do that to themselves, clearly. By the time I reached out to him, I wasn't planning on, ever putting myself in a situation where he could harm me or whatever, so that's kind of where I was going with that comment, if that clarifies.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you for opening up. That's a very beautiful story.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, most definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know it's difficult to be vulnerable and share something so intimate to the world. So thanks. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that will listen, and hopefully that will help them take the path you took and mend some relationships and broken hearts out there.
And hopefully, and the thing is, with something like so big like that, it won't work for everybody. But if it does, what was healing is that, with my case, it was nice, to hear that, even though, and even when he died, it was very funny. I remember because my mom, they were, when my parents were divorced, she was like, oh, don't necessarily cry for him. He wasn't a good father, but when I was crying for the dad I would never have. So I think we all have to process, in our own way, our own grief, and our own relationships, because you can't change what has happened, but you can process, what has happened. And we all have to heal and deal with everything, in our own ways. So I'm sure, people can reach out to, their loved ones. And funny enough, like even the course, I had taken, which was to heal, like there was all this stuff to sign. Like if you have a drinking problem, they're not responsible. If you have a mental health issue, they're not responsible, because I'm sure somebody could go back into drug or alcohol abuse or try to self-harm or what have you, because it could bring up all this stuff if it's unresolved, because it's trying to cut right to the chase of like what to do, but they don't tell anybody to do anything. I'm just saying, like, I just kind of got the gist. It's like, if you really want to resolve things, you can go for it. But again, you don't know how others will necessarily react. But I do think, if you do want to have a closer family and some of the people maybe, are still holding grudges, if you just take on the responsibility, it is a way to break through.
Absolutely.
Well, switching topics a little bit to something a little bit more lighthearted. So a lot of times as creative people and as artists, I know I've had a million wacko, ridiculous side jobs to make money and sometimes be creative and sometimes fun. So I'll go last again, I guess, with this. I mean, I have a feeling, I know you've been involved in the fashion industry forever, Rocco, and you've created your own opportunities with fashion forever. But I almost have a feeling you've done side work as well. So have you had any ridiculous, or even in the fashion industry, anything come to mind that you've done to like get extra money, or a gig, or even fashion related that you've done that was extra crazy to you?
Well, I wouldn't say it's like crazy.
Okay.
I mean, I've done all kinds of extra stuff on the side to make money, like an assistant wardrobe stylist. I've done extra work on sets. I've done like acting work on the side. I've worked as a camera operator before. I've produced stuff on the side. I'm trying to think of what like stuff that would be more entertaining, right? Oh, I know what I did. Okay, I took apart engines.
Oh.
I took apart engines. So my father's a mechanic, and okay, this is more outside of the entertainment field. And I needed to make money to fly to Los Angeles for an interview and a photo shoot on the beach. This was way before I started FNL Network. This is when I was doing Fashion News Live. I was just doing interviews at Fashion Week. And I was short on my airline ticket. So I held a garage sale. I sold some stuff in front of the house. This is what you did at the time in Florida. I was still short. And I told my dad, I'm like, look, I need to make money. I need X amount of dollars to get to Los Angeles to do this photo shoot. I'm going to be interviewed. It's going to help me with my show. And he said, okay, take apart these engines and we can use the scrap metal and sell it. So I literally took apart engines. I did a couple brake jobs. You know what, Sean? I worked on your car when we were in high school.
Oh, really? I don't
Do you remember that?
No.
Yes, I worked on your car before you moved to New York in high school.
Did you charge me?
It was no, I didn't charge you.
Okay.
No, we did.
No, he said no. I don't know. I don't remember.
You came. No, it was on Lee Road at Linto Muffler Shop. It doesn't exist anymore, but we were behind the auto repair shop, and I worked on your car. I like did the brakes or something. Yeah, before you moved to New York, before you drove. You're welcome. You're welcome. But yeah, so that would probably be the oddest out, wildest job. Not so wild, but what I did, it was just like oil everywhere, and I was hot. It was Florida heat, no air conditioning. Prior to that, I would say, and you and I also did this together. We put flyers on people's doors for a pizza place, walking door to door, flyers on doors. You and I did that also together, and I did it also. So those would be the wildest things I've done on the side.
All right. Well, Jeff, you have a good fashion sense. You've got stylish glasses on now. I believe you said you made your own shirt today that you're wearing.
Yes, I did.
Well, which is stylish as well, although we can't see all of it right at this very second. So what else have you done to make some extra money on the side?
So when I actually initially opened my shop, I would stay open till 11 o'clock.
Oh.
I did a lot of traveling, clients at home, and it was a lot. I didn't realize that I was doing so much, but I know I needed the money to build a base. So I did things out of the norm that I normally would not have did owning a shop. I would even leave my shop if a client told me they needed me to come cut their hair at their house and they were going to charge a certain amount of money. I would actually shop lit up I want no clients in there, and I would go travel to that client to make that money just so I can pay the overhead until I saw the amount of clients coming in that I didn't have to do that. So to me, that was probably the craziest thing I ever did, was the traveling, staying open, because actually my shop was beside a strip club, y'all.
Ooh.
So
Oh,
yes, my shop was
There you
beside a
go.
strip.
Were you
Did you
stripping,
have
Jeff?
strippers
Come on,
coming
show
in?
us some moves. Go on, Magic Mike.
So it was always security. So I would be open to about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. I'd be literally still doing people's hair, cutting hair. And
That's amazing.
I enjoyed it, but you know, it was a lot just to keep that overhead. So that's the craziest thing I ever did, really.
That's cool.
Everything else was pretty normal for me. I wouldn't do anything crazy. I was like, no, I was too scared. I was a country boy. I was too scared.
What about you, Bethany? Anything crazy on your side? You look very, very sweet and innocent. So let's see. Anything crazy hiding underneath?
I mean, nothing super, super crazy, like as far as the jobs went. Because I've mostly been doing fashion related jobs for a while at this point. I had my own small business for a little bit on Etsy. As a teenager, actually, no one knew I was a teenager. No one needs to. But I sold like little gift items, like little teddy bears that I would make. But you know, I've done freelancing, like making prom dresses, wedding dresses, alterations, that sort of thing, because I am also on the fashion side like Geoffrey, and I love it. It's so much fun. So it's fun to share that passion with people. But I guess as far as like my resume goes, I don't put this on my resume because it doesn't fit. But for a couple months, I supervised kids in their lunch hour. When I was in college, it was my first year. I was 18. I discovered I hated kids then because the kindergartner told me, he's like, "Are you a fifth grader?" I'm like, "No. I'm a college student. I'm 18. I have my badge." He's like, "You're too short to be 18. My brother's 18 and he's like a foot taller than you." And I'm like, "Everyone's a foot taller than me."
We have a theme today. I love it.
Yeah, I honestly
I am not
thought
a
of
foot
it.
taller than you.
Huh? You are.
I'm not
more
a foot taller than you.
You're like 17 inches, almost a half a yard.
Almost
But-
a foot and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, that's the most out of pocket job. But like, I have had crazy instances in jobs. There's one that comes to mind. It's a little bit crazy. I don't know if it's within theme or not, because it wasn't really a job. It was when I was in high school and I did extracurriculars, but I did do something crazy for it. I don't know if I can share it or not. Okay, so I was a costume designer in high school and I would make costumes, and we were doing Elf the Musical. My director, he hated all of the green flannels for Buddy the Elf's costume that were in store. So I had to dye it. But this was a lot of fabric because Buddy the Elf was very tall. And he, you know, the guy playing him, he was tall, you know, bigger build. So I needed to get a lot of fabric and I had to dye it. But I didn't have a dye pot. And so I did it in the bathtub. I tried to stir it with a broomstick. That didn't work. So the solution was to get in a swimsuit and jump in. My feet were green for about 2 weeks after that.
Oh, that's so
But
funny.
it was
Do you
the
have a
color
picture
the
of it?
director wanted. So he didn't
That's
complain
so
about the color
funny.
after that. But yeah, and then also for the same costume, this caused some people to get mad at me, but we were on a budget. So I was following said budget, and the costume needed faux fur at the collar, and that's expensive. So I went to a thrift store and I saw the perfect item that would be the faux fur for the collar. It was a teddy bear. It was a collar. So I took it apart in glass. So Yeah, it was only $1. It was much cheaper than buying it by the yards. So yeah, they called me the teddy bear killer for a little bit.
No, dumb on the bear.
But yeah, that was the craziest thing, probably. I mean, besides getting a needle in my finger, that's a different story. Rocco might remember that.
I remember that, and I saw the X-rays, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Yeah, the
that looks
X-ray is
painful.
hilarious. Yeah, there's a needle just fully embedded in the bone of my finger. It's just
What in the world?
It's still there.
if you're on
When
an
she needs better
industrial site-
reception,
Hmm?
yeah, when Bethany doesn't have good reception on her mobile phone, she'll hold the finger on the
What in
phone
the world?
on the top, and she'll get a better reception because she has metal. If they left it in, they didn't take it out.
Yeah, they did
She
leave
got
it
she
because it's embedded in the bone. I was on an industrial sewing machine. You can't do this with a regular machine. I was operating a free arm attachment in a bridal shop. I didn't know how to operate a free arm attachment. It was my first time doing it, and the dress was like yanking because it was like a solid 20 pounds, beaded head to toe. Slipped, finger went under. I was like, oh, what's this? Why did the machine stop sewing? And then I look at my finger and I'm like, oh, hi.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but I got that. The X-ray is hilarious. I think it's funny because I just make jokes about
I
it.
think
It
it's
didn't
funny
really
too.
hurt. But they made a big deal out of it. So
Well, thank God you didn't get an infection, or they had to like amputate your finger.
I mean, I was on antibiotics, but they originally told me I was
You'd
gonna
be
have
like,
to
"Hi,
get
my
a
name is Bethany."
Oh,
It
Right.
was
Hi,
the
I'm
middle
Bethany. I have
finger,
4
though,
fingers.
dude. It was the
Oh,
middle.
okay. Hi, I'm Bethany.
Yeah, but they put like a casing on it, so I had like this metal piece sticking out like this. It looked like I was flipping people off for like a solid week.
Oh my
like
God.
that. That's amazing.
But yeah, those are the craziest ones.
Love it. Well, I am the king
She
of crazy jobs, so
It
that's
was
why.
like this. Hello, 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 hello. Hi, my finger. No, I'm okay, sorry, you're the king of crazy jobs.
I am, and kind of how it all came up kind of more or less by accident because of people I met in New York. So it started with one lady I met. She actually is one of the hosts on this show, Bettina, because I asked her, I was like, oh, well, what do you do in New York? And she's like, oh, I do all these industrials and I perform at different corporate events and parties. It's like, well, what do you do at the parties? Well, she said, a lot of times I'll perform for children. I was like, well, what do you do with the children? Well, I'll entertain them. And then sometimes I make balloon animals. I'll do face painting. And I'm like, well, that sounds kind of corny. And she's like, oh, but I make like about $100 an hour. I'm like, that's not so corny. She's like, oh, I also like, read tarot cards. I'm like, oh. And then she's like, yeah, that's also 100 an hour. I'm like, that's not so bad. And then I was like, oh, do you ever need extra people? And then she's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, could you teach me? And she's like, yeah, maybe one day. And then, I hounded her. And then eventually she showed me how to do it. And then I started doing it. Okay. Or wanted to start doing it. Then I met this other woman. And then she had mentioned, oh, yeah, I do different trade shows and things of that nature. And I was like, oh, that sounds good. Basically speaking on mic, speaking to the public. And then I was like, oh, what is that? Oh, anywhere from 200 to 1,000 a day. So then I started speaking, and I still do that to this very day. Funny enough, I have a contract with the automotive industry. I have for years. And I haven't driven a car in 20 years. I've done this job for 20 years, talking about cars. And the guy who takes apart engines, I know nothing about them. I've spoken about them for 20 years, and I get paid very well for it. And ironies of life. But anyhow, moving forward with like my craziness and putting this all together for the funniest and craziest job, the same woman who did trade shows also mentioned that at the time it was very popular before the whole 9/11, and I don't know why it all simmered down after that incident, whatever, in New York, lookalike work was very popular. So she mentioned she sometimes does share at parties. Again, I thought this was kind of silly, like she dresses up a share. She's like, I get 600 an hour. I'm like, not so silly. So I was like, oh, people always said I kind of look like Elvis. So just on a whim, I got an Elvis costume for Halloween. And I just, wore it, a very cheap $75 one from like a Ricky's party store. And I wore it, and people wanted photos at the Halloween parade in New York. So I'm like, hey, baby, I'll shoot up. How's Lisa Marie? So long story short, I just started doing like balloons and like, and I wanted to do tarot, like one party maybe. And we were approaching the year 2000. So I just, had my first little costume for Halloween of Elvis. And I did one like maybe balloon gig. It's almost the year 2000. And I get a call. I just started signing up with these little party companies. And somebody calls me and they're like, okay, so it's the governor's ball for New Year's Eve, the year 2000. What can you do for the governor's ball for 4 hours that nobody else can do? And what do you want for your rate? So I knew it's the year 2000. It's a big deal. Plus, at the time, I mean, Bethany, since you're 12 that we've discovered, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I don't remember. I'm kidding. With Y2K, everybody thought planes were going to crash. It could be the end of the world and all this stuff. So we didn't know about safety. My mother was like, don't leave your house. You're going to die. It's going to be terrible. Stay home, all this stuff. So anyhow, so people were worried about safety. People wanted to celebrate it's the end of the world as well because it's the year 2000. So anyhow, you could get a good fee. I knew that much as well. So they're like, what can you do that nobody else can do and how much do you want? So I said, I can do Elvis tarot reading, just came up with it, for $4,000. They said yes. I was like, oh, okay. So I show up, I put on my Elvis costume. Bettina, she showed me like what each card meant. So I'm studying the cards right before the event. I'm still studying because I don't know what the cards mean. I'm like, so there's one other tarot reader on this event. So I go over and I'm like, hey, have you done this a while? It's like, oh yeah, many years. Sometimes it's like, all right. I'm just like, okay, what is this? What is it? Da, 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 da. And so that's so funny. And then I was like debating, it's like, how do I do this event? I was like, well, if I'm really reading tarot, it's probably really stupid to kind of be like, oh yeah, baby, your future's gonna be all shook up. It's gonna have a lot of peanut butter sandwiches. So I was just like, no, I'm just gonna read it, but I'll wear the costume. So that's what I decided to do. And so one of the readings, I don't know, like say half an hour, 40 minutes in, I do. And two of the women I'm reading, they're like, you're so much better than the other guy. I'm like, well, some of us have the gift, some of us don't. And so it was a huge success. I made that money and that was it. And then boom. And then I, keep these wacky gigs ever since. And so that's the best paid, wackiest, gig that comes to mind. Combining people I met.
$4,000 24 years ago was more than now. Like that was a lot more money than what it is now. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like very silly, fun, random money. And talking about money, a little segue, the price of everything now, as we're kind of mentioning, has gone up. There is inflation. People are angry about it. So has anybody, found a way, or are there any life hacks that we do, or you guys do, to save money? I'm definitely like one of the kings of penny pinching. I even wrote a book about it, which I'll get to. I'll go last again, as I have been doing. Jeff, you got a cute little smile. What do you do to save money, Jeff? Do you have any ways to save money?
No, not really. I don't really spend a lot of money, but if I like something I like, I'm gonna get it. But I kind of no. Let me reverse that. Now, because of what I do with fashion and travel, I do save money because I want to go to the next level. But the normal Jeff would not save money. I'm a very expensive spender, so I do have to work on that. And I'm being very honest with you. I don't.
Well, you're a baller.
So if anybody got any tips, help me so I can start saving money.
I'll share one. Oh yeah, I'm gonna share a big one at the end. All right, what about you, Rocco? Are there ways you try to save money or things you do?
Yes, a lot actually. So one, I always ask myself, do I want this or do I need this? That's one. Second, I'm trying to think of how many tips should I give? I actually do a lot of things. So I live in Los Angeles and there's a lot of driving and gasoline is very expensive. And I've noticed that in my car, I get much better gas mileage when I make sure the tire pressures in my air, the air is correct in my tires. Because if they're not, you get horrible gas mileage. If they are, you get much better gas mileage. Well, I didn't know this until my car started displaying miles per gallon. So I realized, wow, every time I fill up, which I actually fill up about 3 times a week, so all the driving, or 2 times a week, depending on where I'm going. I always make sure the pressure in my tires are good. And another thing is, if you've driven 2 miles or more, you have to give, when you put air in your tires, 4 pounds of pressure on top of what the tire is called for. So for example, I drive a hybrid, so I have to put 35 pounds of pressure in the front. I'll put 39. In the back, it's 33, but I put 37. So that's been helping me a lot with fuel. I don't shop while I'm hungry. If I go shopping while I'm hungry, I buy too much, and then I end up throwing food away because it goes bad. I eat and then I go shop, and I make a list prior, and I plan it out. I eat at home as much as possible. Going out to restaurants is a killer. It's so expensive. So I food prep on the weekend for the week. That's helped me save a lot of money. I make sure to turn all the lights off when I'm not in a room. I don't leave the AC or heating on nonstop. That saves with electricity bill, because electricity is also very expensive in Los Angeles, probably like many other cities in the world. Yeah, so those are the biggest things that I do. I hope that helps anyone up there.
You help me.
See? What about you, Bethany? Are you pinching some pennies somewhere?
Oh yeah, I always do. So we didn't have a ton of money growing up, so I, was raised with very much couponer parents. If you want it as a kid, sorry, look at it. That sort of thing. You couldn't really beg for anything, but so I learned a lot from them, really, about how to save money. And the biggest thing that I like to tell people is generic brands are usually just as good as name brands. With food, at least. You have to be a little bit careful if you have allergies. So if you go to Walmart and you're allergic to a certain kind of nut, don't buy any of their nuts, because there's a good chance there's cross-contamination there. Heads up. Found that out the way. But
No one likes dirty nuts.
but most generic brands are pretty good. So that's something that I do, is I tend to buy generic, because there's really no point in going name brand unless it's with shoes, because shoes, I find those last a long time. I have a pair of Nikes. I've been wearing them for 10 years. They still look good. They still fit.
Wow.
I still have them.
That's amazing.
They're still good. I love them. I'll probably need to.
That's probably because you weigh 20 pounds, so you don't wear out the shoe.
I wish. No, I weigh a little bit more than that, Rocco.
I mean, just to say, to be a 265 pound, 6'4.5" man, I have to replace my shoes every year. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, well, I'm petite, so different story.
Right.
Yeah, I also make my own clothes, so I did find that was cheaper because I make them to last. So I'm not buying fast fashion, which would be what I could afford, but I'm buying the fabric. So like the fabric might be $20 a yard. I only need like a yard to make 2 shirts because of how small I am. So I can get a shirt out of that for like $10. It's just, you got to put in the time, but I don't have a problem doing that. I do it anytime anyway. Mending clothes, I find, is a great way as well, making things last longer. Cooking at home instead of going out. I mean, I'm a little bit biased with this one because I can't go out to eat because I'm allergic to everything, as we know. But, cooking is actually a lot of fun if you can do it safely. Don't burn the house down. Don't walk away from the oven when you're using it. If you're using the oven, stay in the same room for most of the time. If you need to use the bathroom, go do that, but don't don't just walk away from it. I see so many people do that. It's like, well, that's why you burned your baked goods. That's why you burned it. You walked away.
Maybe that's why you burned down your house.
Yeah, I know. It's like that's how that happens. But those are kind of the biggest things that I do. As far as saving money, if you're making like like splurging purchase, Geoffrey, this comes to mind. So if it's like name brand shoes or some sort of name brand fashion, try it on in store, but look online to see if you can get it used or thrifted, because there are a lot of thrifting platforms online these days. They're usually half price from like, buying it new, and some of them will be just as good. I got a pair of shoes that I got a pair of flats because I needed some online, fit me perfectly. And it was only like $15 for a nice pair of flats that will last me forever. So
Okay.
yeah, that's one of my
Oh.
favorite ones.
All right. Well, I love to save money. So going off of what you just said, Bethany, I have a friend and she always goes online like Poshmark and everything, and we'll find her Louis Vuitton and they warranty it. All consignment stores, like they'll have top designer stuff, and some of the websites will definitely, guarantee the authenticity and so forth. And it'll be half the price if you want to be bougie and go with the top designers, or if you're in a town with consignment stores, you'll get something that's a, brand. You can see it, try it on, and have it for a fraction of the price. In New York specifically, I'm going to start with lower deals and then go to the number one deal at the very end. Oh yeah, get ready for all the viewers. Okay, so counting down. So if you're visiting New York, so a great way to see theater. So they have the TKTS booths in Times Square and then also downtown by where the Freedom Tower is. That's where you can get 50% off of your show tickets by waiting in line. Aside from that, then there's lottery systems where you can go online and win tickets for a fraction of the price, usually the first few rows for the shows. So typically the tickets are around $20 to $40 for some of the top shows on Broadway. You can win those seats. For locals in New York, there's different websites. I often see Broadway shows for as low as $5 on a regular basis. For teachers and artists, there's educators, teachers, artists, and a lot of other people. You can look into TDF. The same people do TKTS. It's online, $50 Broadway tickets. You can order in advance for many of the top shows as well. I see Broadway very regularly. So there's many ways to not even spend anywhere near $100 and see most of the shows on Broadway regularly as far as your entertainment's concerned. For artists specifically in say New York, LA, Chicago, your major markets, there's the Actors Fund. So they offer things, as far as like artist housing, where they might have discount housing that you can look into. They have a shoe fund. Every 2 years, you can get a free pair of shoes, Rocco. So if you haven't done it, by showing, the something Herschel, I forgot his first name, but something Herschel fund. Every 2 years, you get a free pair of shoes. So your tall self can get a free pair of shoes every 2 years. Because this gentleman created this fund because he believed if you had nice shoes, you can book an acting job. So he started this fund. He left his inheritance for a shoe fund with the Actors Fund. So with a copy of your SAG or equity card or what have you, every 2 years, you're entitled to a free pair of shoes. They also have health insurance for those in need. They have retirement communities for actors in need. Also like gypsy housing for actors who are looking for roommates. So it's a great resource for actors. It's called the Actors Fund for any artists out there looking for help. Okay, now skipping forward to the number one deal. You don't need to be an artist. It is for anyone with medium to lower income. So that's the only caveat for this. It can be found in a book written by a very handsome, very funny, very verbose gentleman named Sean P. Bennett called Luxury Deals and Deals. But you don't have to buy the book because the biggest deal is going to be given right here, right now for viewers of an amazing show created by a very tall gentleman named Rocco Gaglioti. Okay, so the deal is going to be on something called 80-20 housing. So 80% of the apartment complex pays full price. 20% of the apartment complex does not. I am part of that 20%. It is luxury housing. My apartment, which is not this fake backdrop behind me, but my apartment go for over $6,000 a month right here in New York City. I have my own 1-bedroom. We have a roof deck that's
It's a beautiful apartment.
fully furnished roof deck with grills, a little shower. I have a panoramic 360 view of all of Manhattan. There's a gym downstairs, 24-hour doorman. None of this to really brag because I'm going to tell you how to get one as well. But I guess it's a little bit of bragging. Okay, so here's the deal. And there's even a gym downstairs as well, small little gym. I have a washer dryer in my bathroom, which most people in New York do not have. Now, these buildings can be found. So Jeff, you had mentioned before, you may want to move to a big city. They can be found, these buildings, in Miami, in Chicago, in New York, in LA. So most major metropolitan areas. So it is not an exclusive to New York thing only. So major cities all throughout the US do run this program. The building management company I am with, so any of our viewers can look into it if they would like to, is called Related Management. The program is called 80-20 Housing, if you would like to look into this. So how it works, it is a lottery system. So you do need to have good credit typically. They then do a lottery system, and then you do have to have a certain income. Now, even at different times in New York, incomes could have been as high as $100,000, but then your rent would be a little bit higher. Typically, the incomes you're usually 50 or below, depending on how many people in an apartment or whatever, for your annual income. Now, the good news is, once you are chosen for your apartment, you are rent controlled and you're locked in. So I was chosen for my apartment over 20 years ago. And so at the time, my apartment was $4,000 a month, and I got in for a little bit over $500 a month. And so now, 20 years later, my rent is now, instead of $4,000 a month, retailing at over $6,000 a month, and my rent that I pay is just a little bit over $800 a month. For everybody else who at the other 80% are paying over $6,000 a month. Thank you, baby Jesus. So you're welcome to all of our viewers. So feel free to look into this deal as well. So it's a great way to live in a major metropolitan, area, and you're not breaking the bank. And then that way you can afford the food and the theater and a lifestyle and be in a major city. So that is the best deal that I know of, and that's what I'm very happy to share with everybody. And it's the biggest blessing I've gotten in New York City and the biggest deal that I've ever heard of, and I was lucky enough to get.
Like it.
Yeah, and we've talked over an hour, so is there anything else that you folks want to share? Anything else you
No, I think we can wrap it up.
All right, well, let's just wrap it like a gift. All right, well, thank you guys. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching as well. Peace out, I guess, right? All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Have a good night, everybody. Bye.